Hi there, everyone. Christian Coley here with From the Source, another episode, and I have a special guest, and her name is Alessandra Willsher from Guerrilla Works. I'm so psyched to have her on. Alessandra, welcome to this new awesome show.
Thanks. Super excited to chat.
Awesome. So we're going to get straight into it. For those who haven't tuned in, we have kind of like a short form webinar series here and podcast series where we learn about people in the industry and kind of talk about latest trends and kind of get into the personal stuff, like how'd you get to where you're going and kind of any advice for people coming up through the ranks or want to get into staffing recruiting. So, but yeah, let's get started. First, I want to dig in about you and kind of your career growth. So where did you grow up and what was your first job is my first question.
So I grew up in Canada. I'm from Ottawa, so the capital of Canada. It's like a pretty small city. And I grew up on the outskirts of the city. And so my first job was actually on a horse farm as a stable hand. So very not related to staffing. But yeah, that was my first job.
Interesting. Okay, so stable hand. That doesn't sound, without knowing much about the horse game, that doesn't sound very like glamorous.
Yeah, it wasn't so glamorous, no.
So tell me was it kind of like a dirty job? Are you talking like hay and horse?
Yeah,
horses,
I was like really obsessed with riding, and so it was just sort of an extra way that I could spend more time in the farm and then get extra riding time. So it was sort of like a work exchange. So I would like muck stalls, feed horses, turn them in and out of the fields, and like clean, basically.
Clean. Okay. Yeah. How old were you when you did that?
I started when I was like 13 or 14, 13, I think, doing that.
Okay. That's pretty young. But,
yeah.
But like, I think that I worked on a golf course and did like manual labor at one point. And I was like, I think it's good to have that experience, kind of like harder, like working with your hands experience when you're younger, like to know what kind of a good day's work is like.
Yeah. And it's also like, totally. And the work was really satisfying because when you're done, you see the work when you're done. Like, if I had to turn the horses out and muck stalls, like it's very obvious when it's done. And if you've done it, a good job. So that was like, it was like pretty quick, like dopamine rush of like,
it's like gratification.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. Pretty
it's like landscaping. And again, what I did with manual labor, it's like you mow the lawn and it looks great. And you're like, this is amazing. But you get to spend time with like animals and horses.
Yes, exactly.
So there was a benefit to that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so there's kind of a big contrast between stable hand at a farm versus like the technology space, which you're in now at Guerrilla Works. So tell me about that ascent. Like, how did you get into just technology space?
So obviously, I graduated from being a stable hand, and I went to work other part-time jobs.
Okay, good. You went to school and you got a job.
I was in university. During university, I was actually working in staffing at a hospital part-time, which was really interesting. Yeah. So that sort of introduced me to the staffing world. And then I moved on to work in tech. So after I graduated university, I did a sort of graduate rotational program at one of the really big telecom companies in Canada. And my last role there was in their media branch. And I was the product owner for Crave, which is sort of the equivalent of Hulu in Canada, because we don't have Hulu here.
Wow. Yeah, I just learned that, by the way, and that is like shocking. I'm in a bubble here in the US. I think everyone has the same services.
Yeah, so Hulu doesn't exist here, or you have to be, crafty with VPNs and stuff. But I think it's because Crave, that streaming service, has a lot of the rights to the content that Hulu has, but just in Canada.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so you went into the media side, and then you did you do some rotations there, you said, like kind of like to see how you actually were getting into product and tech?
Yeah. So my first rotation was like a business analyst in a sort of strategy role. And then I moved to work in marketing. And then from there, I did my last rotation in product. And then I just sort of fell in love with working in product, and that really stuck.
Cool.
And that's sort of been what I've been doing since.
What did you like about product? And did you think that rotation was going to be the one that dictated?
I honestly had no idea what product was before I even started.
I love asking that question because normally yeah, it's not what you
Yeah,
expect.
exactly. Like I really had no idea what it was going to be. I was like, yeah, product manager. That sounds like project manager. It seems, Crave was a really cool platform, but I just really loved it because of like every day you're solving different problems. You're working with different teams. Like you're working with, developers really closely. You're working with marketing, strategy. You're working with like legal and sales. Like there's so many people that you work with. So you get to see from so many different perspectives of the business, which I really loved. So I was like learning a ton and like working with really smart people and like sort of figuring out sort of everything from lots of different perspectives, which I really love.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I liken it to like for med students doing rotation, they get to kind of spend time in different areas and see what they like. And then at some bigger corporations or things, they'll have these training programs, and not everyone gets that. But like, how even when you go through college and stuff, you're like, oh, what major? You see a lot of people switching majors because they don't know what they like.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with like in the professional world, but you got lucky there because you got to kind of dabble.
Yeah, it was such a good program. Like one of my friends had gone through it and he had recommended it to me because he was like, you'll just get to try a bunch of different things. And then by the time you know what you like, that's the one that you'll be able to pick it, which sounded perfect because I was really convinced that I wanted to work in strategy. And then after that first rotation, I was convinced that I did not.
Tell me about that.
Man.
What was it about that?
I think working in strategy is awesome. My role, I was like coding SQL databases and like building business cases. Mm-hmm. And then because the company I worked for is so big, you would come up with these ideas, sort of validate them in a business case, and then hand that business case off to the projects team and then sort of start over. And I really was like, well, I want to see how, I want to be part of implementing the solution and seeing if it works and all of that. So I felt like it was like too much of the planning and the before.
Right.
So then I pivoted. I was like, okay, I did experiential marketing, which is super hands-on and super execution.
Yeah.
And then the pendulum like swung a little bit too far because I was like, I'm missing some of that, like
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know if you've drawn this parallel yet, but if we go back to your time as a stable hand, you did a lot of the cleaning up and the before, but then you got to see the afterwards. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So you didn't like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So where you ended up was basically the stable hand equivalent,
basically of tech. Yeah. Which is perfect because like you work with the team to come up with features or ideas or improvements, and then you're part of the process to get that done, and then you see it, so it's really satisfying when the things that you build are really solving problems. Similarly to stable hands, it's satisfying.
I mean, you kind of have see before, after you work really hard, and then you can see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, so now we both have ended up in the staffing technology game, right? So I kind of want to understand, what are you doing at GorillaWorks? Tell me about how you found that role and what you guys are doing there. You guys, I know you're doing some awesome stuff. Yeah.
So I found the role because a friend of mine that I had worked with on the streaming app, he was working there, and they were looking for somebody in product, and so he sort of was like, just talk to Shaheen. He's the CEO, and he really made the case that he's like, we're solving really complicated problems, and it's really fun. Everybody's really smart. So which is a really good draw if you're trying to solve problems in like a really engaging environment. And then I met the team and I really loved them. And so that's why I decided to join GorillaWorks. And yeah, we're solving problems for the staffing industry, which is not an industry that I was super familiar with before, because I had worked at a health tech startup and then that streaming app. So it was so much fun to like learn all about it. People in staffing are so passionate about staffing, which I think it's very unique to this industry. Like everybody's passionate about their job and everything, but people in staffing, like they love staffing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a great, you're putting people to work the whole, right? So it's
exactly. Yeah. And that passion, it's really inspiring and it really rubs off on you and helps, you get really committed to to the cause and like solving all of these problems. So that's what we're doing at Guerrilla Works. Like basically we're trying to make it easier for staffing agencies to find, hire, and place talent.
Okay.
And so that's sort of what drives all of our initiatives. So we tackle it in a couple different ways. We have some front office tools that are really helping the recruiters find and present talent to their clients. The main thing that we're focusing on right now is we have this proprietary parser that we've built, which is really cool. That goes with our resume templating tool that we call Guerrilla Resume. So you can send templated resumes to clients, and the way that it works is really neat. So clients can use like their own templates. They don't need to sort of conform to one that we decide, which is great for them. And then we have a middle and back office. So once that talent has been hired, they can onboard them super seamlessly and then pay and bill their talent and their clients, and sort of an integrated timesheet and invoicing and all that fun stuff in the back office.
I love that. I love that you have that you're covering both. I mean, you have obviously like some people have like a niche somewhere, but you have like front office and back office applications, which, as we know, staffing, right? Like kind of always a few years behind the curve, but to have a team like yours that actually knows the challenges in and out, and you have the back office solution and the front office. And yeah, we're seeing that all the time. Like, so at similar at SourceFlow, we have, I ran into a team the other day that like a couple people's job almost all week is like manually formatting jobs that are getting marketed and put out. Right. And so with the advent of like modern technology, AI and things like that, like there's no reason people should be manually like formatting this stuff. And like we're saving them hundreds of hours, right, a month in doing that. Sounds like you're doing that, but on the candidate like resume side, which is another like time suck, right?
Totally. And there are teams that do this at staffing companies, right? They'll take the candidate's resume and like, some candidates' resume. I recognized when we started working on this tool, I was like, wow, my resume is super annoying for recruiters. It's like full of colors and blocks, and it's in a PDF that's like not created super great because it was and I'm like, wow, this is super annoying. And I didn't really know that before I started working in staffing and on these tools. So it's basically taking, somebody like me's annoying resume and then templating it, putting in like a really easy to read, like digestible format for clients so that they know what to expect when they're getting resumes from you, so they can really make their decisions quickly.
Right. And every industry, every staffing company, and that every client within that probably has different ways of formatting it that they like or they find the most effective.
Exactly.
So
and then
you were allowing them to do that.
Exactly. And lots of our clients have, they'll have lots of different templates, because some will have client specific ones because a specific client wants to receive a resume that looks like this, or they'll have a VMS specific template because they need to make sure that there's no branding on it, versus for their like retail clients or banking clients, they'll have different types of templates. So the tool really allows them to maintain that level of like customization for whoever and however they want to send them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super effective time for those changes for sure. Okay, so you've been there a little bit. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the industry, or like latest trends you're seeing?
So I feel like the industry has changed so much in the past couple of years, mostly, well, maybe not mostly, but in large part because of like how AI is so available. Before, if you wanted to have any sort of AI as a tech company, you had to build it yourself and spend so much money training these models and doing all of that work on all of that machine learning yourself. And now there's so many tools that are open source that you can really, grab on and build on top of to customize to what you need.
Yeah.
So I think with that, it's like it's not only made tech companies be able to work way faster, but staffing agencies, like on their side, they want to start using it because it's sort of a race to who can use it the most effectively among their own competitors. Because if one company is using it super effectively to optimize all of their processes, the other staffing agencies want to follow and do that too. So I think the just the adoption of technology and the interest in automation and using AI for whatever they can, so that people can focus on like people stuff, is what I'm seeing the most, which is super cool.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, we've seen that for a while, right? That everyone wants to optimize their tech stack. They're not really sure how. Then now everyone wants to use AI. They're not exactly sure. Everyone's trying to like, I feel like we're still almost like in education phase and like early adoption, right? And to your point, like everyone needs I mean, most agencies have an ATS CRM, right? But then it's like, sure, but it's who's using these tools the most effectively that's actually going to gain the results. And that's the next that's the next iteration of that.
And I've been talking like all the companies that I'm talking to, everybody is thinking about all of these things in a way that I think a couple of years ago they weren't. They were looking at sort of the bigger pieces, and now they're looking to see how does everything tie together. And so it's cool. The conversations are super interesting, and everybody's, looking at the same things and how they can tweak it for themselves, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting time since the last like 12, 18 months for the industry's been like really hard and down compared to previous. So it's like companies have had to kind of understand how do we actually make the most of what we have today, right? And also looking at part of that is actually looking at their tech stack and be like, where can we optimize? Where can we consolidate? Or where are we spending too much money? Where can AI come in and play a role? So a lot of where people maybe haven't been buying a lot as compared to previous years, they're looking at like, what do we have and how can we optimize what we have?
Yeah. And I think that's where tools, like some of the tools that we've built really help with that. Because Gorilla Resume, instead of spending upwards of 20 minutes formatting a resume, recruiters are spending, a minute or two to format that. So that, that frees up so much time if they're doing, 10 of those in a day. So much time is freed up now for them to talk to their candidates and like do all of that work that really they're so great at. And on our back office tool, we've integrated a bunch of really cool features in there that automate compliancy. So we have this tool that we call Gorilla Vision that checks documents that consultants are uploading and like validates lots of different rules on each of these things to make sure, that their work permit isn't expired, their like driver's license name matches what they put on their form and all sorts of things like that. And then flags those inconsistencies both to the consultant and then to the staffing office's sort of back office team so that they're not, rather than checking, 50 documents for a consultant, they're really focused on the ones that do have inconsistencies. And so things like that, I think staffing agencies are starting to look at like, how do we optimize what we have instead of, and like consolidating things. There's a, looking at, we have two tools that do essentially the same thing. How do we drive that down to one? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then of course the AI components, like how do we, then just super educations, like what are people using AI for today? What tools are available? And then how do we actually implement them effectively? Right. Let's just buy a tool and then just have it sit there, not doing anything. But that kind of echoes what we're doing. A lot of talk around business development, of course, like the sales aspect has been a big push. And then, a lot of our conversations, like people don't want to be spending like the job boards in our area of the industry are like ever more expensive. So how can they reduce job board spend, but still get have marketing become like a real revenue generator, but like through websites or social media, which are like own channels, right? That aren't as expensive. So it's all about kind of like optimizing and getting more ROI. So seeing very similar things.
Yeah, I've been hearing that like people are really starting to examine their job board spend because they're getting, they're not always the friendliest for staffing.
No. And you're touching that too, right? And I think we kind of symbiotic because like we can do a lot of formatting and data quality, but a lot of times people's resumes are people's resumes, right? And we're passing that to the ATS, right? So that's where you come in and able to kind of clean that up because we can't really control what people are, how they're formatting that resume. I mean, you can potentially, but I think that's where you guys come in, right? So
yeah, exactly. Because we don't want to, I think, the goal is to get those resumes in-house, right? So we don't want to stop a candidate by saying like, oh, your resume doesn't conform to our standards. So it's better for us to do that on the other side so that we get that information in, but how do we take the least amount of time to do it?
Right. Plus they don't know, even if you start to coach them on the front end before doing that, they don't know how that particular client might want to see the resume in a completely different way. So it'd be impossible for them to know how to format that how you want it.
Yeah, exactly. We are working on Gorilla Resume so that staffing agencies can actually send a link with the template that they like to a candidate
Oh, okay.
so that'll be like an interesting thing to see how that gets adopted. And if that's something, we've heard from lots of different clients that it's something that they would like to be able to actually send the tool for a candidate to use with the template that they've chosen so the candidate themselves can go in and do that work.
Yeah.
So TBD,
Cool.
maybe we can talk
Yeah.
again in a
No,
few
I
months
love
and
that.
how that goes.
I love that. We're always evolving and coming to
Yeah.
new things. So last question.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a choice, either your worst job or your worst interview experience.
Good question. I pick interview experience.
Okay. All right.
I was interviewing for this company. It was ages ago. It was very early
Okay.
in my career. And I had been working at that media company on that app, on the streaming app. So it was like a streaming app on, iOS, Android, all the smart TVs and on desktop. And they opened up the interview by reading the Apple Store reviews of the app. And I was like, oh boy, this is not
Oh
going to go
no.
well. Yeah, that
Oh
was,
my
yeah,
God.
it was a bit intense. Yeah, it was a bit,
Really? And they
yeah.
weren't positive
I mean,
reviews.
they read both, but
Okay.
so there were some positive, but it really set a very bizarre tone to the beginning of the
Yeah.
interview. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice, I would say,
Yes.
on their part.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
It was definitely strange.
Not something I would do. Okay, good. I
Yeah.
love that. That's very, I mean, some of these experiences you just don't
Yeah.
believe
Totally. And it's like,
happen.
yeah, some people's, they were complaining about various things, some of which I had control over, some of which I didn't. So it was a bit cringy.
Yeah, it's a little unnecessary.
Yeah.
And not very much in the holiday spirit. I hope people could deal with my lights in the background.
Yeah, I
I'm
love it.
getting very festive. Alessandra, thanks so much for joining.
Oh my
This
gosh, no
was
problem. It's so
amazing.
fun.
Yeah, we have to do it again. But what you guys are doing over there sounds great. And I know we're going to partner up on a lot of stuff in 2025. And
Yeah.
it seems like the industry is coming around too. So a lot of exciting things happening.
Yeah.
But best of luck closing out the year.
Thanks. Same for you.
Awesome. Cool. Take it easy. See you later. Good luck.
Thanks. Happy holidays.
All right. You too. Bye.